Don't you wish that you could call up creativity whenever you felt that you needed it and it would just show up? I have had experiences, and you probably have too, where you are writing or you're doing something and you just want to be more creative and it just doesn't seem to come to you. You just have no creativity, it seems like. But then when you don't expect it, you're doing something else, and all of a sudden, your mind just starts working and you feel creative and you feel all these ideas coming to you. Why does that happen? And why can't we just be creative when we need to be? So we're going to talk about that today. I'm going to give you 7 ways to be more creative and maybe how to call up creativity when you need it rather than when it wants to show up.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Amante channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia, and I'm here on Fridays to give you some writing tips and to talk about things like creativity. So let's talk about that today. So we are born creative beings. I've heard like spiritual teachers talk about that, right? That we are just divinely made to be creative. And I believe that's true, right? And I believe it's kind of built into us. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have survived as long as we have, right? Like cavemen had to be creative in order to be able to survive. They had to think of ways to build tools and how to do things to become, to survive, to find animals, to find food, to find shelter, to do all that. And they had to be creative in the ways that they did it. So we are just naturally born creative beings. The only problem is that that we can't seem to control it, right? We can't seem to say, okay, we need to be more creative right now and we're going to do it. So why not? Like, why can't we control it? Why can't we just say, just kind of turn it on like a light bulb, right? It's like, it's time to write and I need the creativity to come and, give me some ideas on how to complete the scene or how to write the book. So let's talk about, can we do that? Can we actually turn it on more when we need it and use it to write our books? So one thing we need to think about is that unexpected idea is really not as unexpected as we think, right? So when we're doing something, all of a sudden we have this like flash of brilliance that is coming out of nowhere. It's usually because you have been thinking about something. Now, I'm no brain expert, though I wish I was, because I think it's fascinating, right? How the brain works and how we think. But what happens is usually you've been thinking about something, and maybe you've been frustrated because the idea or whatever solution to a problem that you've been trying to come up with just doesn't come up with. The more you think about it, it actually seems like the harder it is to come up with the solution or the idea. So what I have learned about how the brain works is that when there is repeated action, right? When we think about something again and again and again, and we tie some kind of emotion to it, we tend to remember it more and we tend to connect, right? More with whatever it is. So if there's a problem we're thinking about and we're thinking about it again and again and again, and when we're frustrated, there's kind of a blockage, right? It's like it's blocking the answer. But when we think about it and we try to ask questions about the solution and not get frustrated, just like, well, how could I fix this scene? What is going on with it? How could I make it work? What can I do with the characters? What can I change? Right? So when we ask these questions that are helpful, and we just think about it and we do it again and again and again, and we have that, like, the emotion, the expectation, I guess, of getting an answer, it's going to come to us, maybe not at that second, but it's going to come to us eventually because we have been thinking about it. So that unexpected answer that comes to us, or that creativity, again, is not really that unexpected because you've actually kind of primed your mind to come up with a solution. So let's say that we then want to be creative every day at 7 o'clock in the morning, right? What we will want to do is sit down at our desk every day at 7 o'clock in the morning. So create that habit of at 7 o'clock in the morning every day, I write. right? So then your brain starts to expect that, because that's when you usually are creative, right? So you're creating this routine of again and again and again of expecting to be able to write during that time. So finally, when you do, your brain is already ready for that. It's ready to sit down and start to be creative, rather than if you just randomly decide, okay, today I'm writing at 7, and then maybe today I'm writing at 10, the next day I'm writing at 10, and then, next week I've got to write in the evening. You're kind of all over the place, and your brain is not ready. Like, it doesn't know, right, that you want to be creative right now. But if you do it on this regular habit, this is why a lot of times, right, writers and teachers and stuff will tell you, try to create a habit of doing it at the same time every day. And the reason they do that is because of that, right? Because that you're training yourself to be able to think. So when you sit down, your mind will already say, okay, I'm ready to start creating, I'm ready to start thinking about this story that you're working on. And what you're doing is you're creating sort of what they call the neurological pathway, right? So where your brain cells are used to connecting that time and sitting at your desk with being creative and with writing. And even if something does not come to you, because of course that happens as well, even though you might be sitting there every single day, right, to sit down and write, you might still find that, you get stuck at a scene. And so the good thing, what you want to do is just think about it and say, okay, like, ask yourself those questions. What can I do? How can I fix things? What can I change? Maybe go back a little bit, like, where did I go off track at some point that I need to return to that? And then just let it go and let your brain work. And then the next day, come sit down at the same time with your story, and you'll probably have an answer. Your brain will have thought about it. It'll have worked in the background, right? And then when you sit down, it will be ready to answer that question. So another thing about your mind is that it works in images, right? It works in images, and it creates analogies. So let's say, for example, that, you were stuck, you've got your hero chasing a villain, and you're like, well, I don't really understand what's going on here. Why is he chasing him? I don't know what's going on, and I can't figure out, like, why. I can't figure out a good reason or whatever, right? So what you're doing is you're letting it go, right? You're asking your questions, and you're sitting, and then you might be like at a coffee shop, you might be somewhere, you might be just sitting in your car, and you might see a man like chasing after his dog, and then your mind is like, oh wait, that's why the hero is chasing the villain. It's because he had him in a locked car. He got out of the locked car, and he saw that the villain got out, and he started chasing after him. Now, one thing has nothing to do with the other, right? Like, that scene has nothing to do with some guy chasing a dog. But your mind works in these weird ways where if you let it go, it will start looking for answers, and it will create answers from random stuff. So one thing has nothing to do with the other, but your brain will still connect the two and give you an answer. It'll still come up with something just because it sparked something. When you saw that guy chasing the dog, it's like, okay, that's why this person is chasing, right? So it makes no sense, but our mind sometimes doesn't make sense to us because it works in this just seemingly random way. But it actually does make sense to us, because it sees things, creates things, comes up with answers, and it tries to answer the questions that you already asked it. And so really, it doesn't matter why, you really want to just go with it, right? So since our mind does have that capacity just to wander from one thing to another and jump from one unrelated thing to another, we want to use that to our benefit. So if we just let it do what it's doing, it's going to bring you the creativity that you're asking for. It's going to bring you the answers, the solutions to your plot issues, your plot problems, and maybe even life issues, right? If you've had questions or things that you're worried about. Sometimes it's just nice just to relax and let your brain do what it's doing, and then not stress about it, and then see what comes up the next time you sit down at your desk to write. So how do we increase then the possibility of being more creative? Well, because I definitely get ideas when I don't want them. So when I'm swimming, I'm submerged underwater, right? I come up with all these ideas that I can't do anything about because I'm in a pool. And then when I'm sitting at my desk, I still have those issues where it's like, I don't know what to say. So we want to increase that. So one of them I've already mentioned, right? The first thing is kind of create a habit of writing at a certain time, right? When at the same time every day, and allow your brain to expect that time to be the creativity time. The second thing is to use that priming of your mind. So end your writing day with some questions about the scenes that are coming up or the chapter that's coming up the next day. So as you end the day, think about what questions do you have about the next scene. So end with some questions, give your mind something to work with. You might even want to meditate or visualize, right, the what's coming up, and then let it go. Instead of actually writing, just let it go for that day and then go on with whatever you're doing. So if you, let's say you write for an hour a day, well, at the end of that hour, think about what's coming up, close up your scene, whatever you're working on, and keep thinking about what are you going to write tomorrow? What are the things that are going to write? You can write notes if you want to, but I wouldn't even do that. Just think about it, visualize it, and then just close everything up and go away. And the next day when you come back, you're more likely to actually know exactly what you're going to be writing and not be stuck and not spend 15 minutes of your hour just kind of deciding what's going to happen. The third way is to think of think of your problem in a different way. So rather than, we're writers, we think of our scenes, we think of what is going to happen, what should we write, what should the character do. Instead of doing that, spend a little time doing something different. If you're an artist, you can sketch out some things. If you can do some free association, just think of your story in a different way, and that will actually spark some creativity because you're not you're not creating in the same way. You're creating in a little bit of a different way, which gives your mind maybe just a little bit of an electrical jolt because it's a little different. It's like, oh wow, she's doing something different today. Or maybe looking through pictures of your location, or having a conversation with your characters, right? Just writing a little bit of a dialogue where you're talking to the character. So something that's slightly different than just sitting down and starting to write your scenes, so that it creates more, it gets the creative juices going. Pausing for a second to let you know about a couple of courses that I've created. If you're a beginning writer and you want some help with your book, I just want to let you know that I do have a basic course on how to write, and I'm going to post it below. And if you're not a beginning writer, but you are more established and you're ready to publish your work, you have your novel written, I also have a publishing course, and I will also post it below, so take a look at it. Maybe there'll be just what you're looking for. All right, let's go back to the video now. The fourth way is to make sure that when you are writing, you're in a distraction-free place. So a lot of times what happens is that we're not as creative because we are distracted. We're distracted by the things that we have just, maybe we just got out of work. We're still thinking about the things that we left behind at work, or there are some, some household things going on, and our mind is still on that. So we want to either get away from there, go to a coffee shop, go somewhere else where you're not going to be distracted by the things that, normally are going to distract you. Or if you can't do that, just create a distraction-free zone within your house. Go to a place where, turn on some music so that it's quiet. I would even get rid of things like clutter, because that can be distracting, just visually distracting. So if you can do that, that's helpful, right? Just to kind of get rid of everything so that you're really, really focused and and put things that make you creative in your writing environment rather than the things that distract you. You don't want to have a basket full of laundry, right? That's just going to make you think of the work that you have to do. But if you have, a nice picture, if you have a candle, if you have some pretty flowers or something, right? That's going to actually inspire you to be more creative rather than distract you with stuff that you need to do outside of your writing. So create that nice environment that allows you to be more creative. Okay, the fifth thing is to be more happy, which sounds weird. It's like, of course, I'd love to be more happy. But, have you noticed, like, when you go on vacation or you're doing something where you actually are happier, that you're actually more creative, right? When I go on vacation, I feel happier, and then I can think of my stories. I'll come up with ideas. I'll come up with ways that I'd like, things I'd like to teach, or how I'd like to approach certain things, because I'm more relaxed. So get yourself into that happy, relaxed mood, right? However whatever it is for you. So it's different for every person, right? Maybe just sitting in your backyard brings you some joy with your flowers. Maybe going for a little drive, might bring a little bit of just relaxation and happiness. It's different for everyone, right? Going for a walk, doing something where you're taking your mind away from, the distractions, and you're also just putting yourself in that happy mood. It could be, promote alcohol, but glass of wine sometimes, right, might help. I remember for a while there was a season where I would have my glass of wine in the evenings, and then I'd sit down and start writing. I thought, well, that probably wasn't the best idea because it makes me tired, and don't want to start doing that all the time, right? But every once in a while. But there was a time when I was doing that, and it was working, right? It was just getting my mind. I was teaching all day, and I was just wanted to unwind a little bit, just get into a more mellow mood, and that worked. So again, just where you can be more relaxed, in a happy mood, undistracted, that will help you to be more creative. Okay, number 6 is to get a little bit more rest or sleep. So sometimes that's what we need, right? So if we're finding that we're having a week where we're just, we're working, we're running around, and we sit at our computer, we're just too tired, we're falling asleep, we have no creativity, right? That can happen because you're exhausted. So if that happens, you might just benefit from saying, okay, today I'm going to get some extra sleep. And then maybe tomorrow I will be a little bit more creative because I won't be as tired. So if you're tired, it's kind of hard to be creative. So make sure that you are getting enough rest, enough sleep. Again, I think meditation helps. So even if you don't have time to, if you just can't, for some whatever reason, get enough sleep, taking a little 15 or 20-minute meditation where you're calming your mind and just relaxing can help, right? Or taking like a little 15-20 minute nap. I cannot do that. I know some people can do that. I can't, but it's very helpful for people that can do it. You get that rest, right? You get the 15-20 minute rest where you rest your mind, and that helps you to keep going. If you can do that, if you're lucky enough to be able to take a little 15-20 minute nap, you might try that. Just as long as you're getting, you're feeling rested, you're going to be able to be more creative. Number 7 is to make sure that you are taking some time to be by yourself with your thoughts. So a lot of times we're not as creative because we are constantly thinking, like we would jump from one thing to the next, and we don't ever take a break to actually think. So if you don't have any time to think, how can you think about a story? How can you be creative about a story? And I remember reading a book where the author was talking about this, right? About how we've moved from a society that used to be, there used to be a lot of downtime, right? So we used to go to work, then we drive home or whatever. I'm talking like pre-phones, right? Right now, what do? Is the second we get out of a meeting, get out of work, the first thing we do is we pick up the phone. And what does the phone do? It tells us all the problems that we have. We have all these emails of people trying to contact us, and one person wants that, somebody else wants this. There's a bill to pay. There's a dentist appointment we have to remember, right? There's all these things, and your brain has to process all of that. So instead of getting out of work, not having your phone, getting in your car, driving, walking to, your bus stop, whatever you're doing, where you have that time just in your own mind to think, right? Or in the past too, people would there'd be a break between like work and home. Maybe they went to sit in a coffee shop or whatever. They did something else. They got home, they had a little break. They'd go in their backyard. And now with all our gadgets and all our phones and all that stuff, we are constantly bombarded with just voices in our mind that, and we need to get rid of those, right? So the only voice we don't have is our own. So if at the very least, take a few minutes before you start writing to be alone with your own thoughts. Even if you're not thinking about your story, just a few moments just to think about whatever, just to be by yourself, because that helps to kind of empty your brain a little bit of all the things that are out there and just be able to think. And that is going to help you be more creative because, your thoughts are actually going to be there rather than all the other things that you're usually thinking about. So what am I saying here with these 7 things is your mind needs 2 things. First of all, it needs rest and time to think and explore, right? It needs time to wander and think about all this stuff because it likes to do that. It likes to jump from one thing to another. It likes to be restful and be able to think and, think about things. The other thing that your brain needs, it does need some structure. It needs to know when you want it to be creative. So giving it some time at the same time every single day where you are writing, where you're expecting it to be creative. So if you can give your mind a little bit of freedom and quiet time and time to be, just think of a little kid that likes to play and explore and try new things. That's what your brain needs, right? It needs time to do that. It needs time to kind of think around and jump up from one thing to the other and just have thoughts. Without you shooting them down, by the way, because a lot of times we do have thoughts. We think of things and we think, well, that's kind of dumb. Let's not do that. That's silly, right? That's a dumb story idea. Well, don't do that. Let your brain play with that idea. Let it go from one thing to another. It might not end up being the exact thing that it thinks about because it's kind of raw and just, yeah, I guess raw is when we first think of something, it's we haven't thought it out well. But just go with it. Let it go where it needs to go, and then you can structure it a little bit more. So it needs that time, that freedom to do that. And it also needs the structure of saying, okay, you're going to do this. I expect you to be creative at this time. I expect you to come up with something to write. I expect you to say something to me when I sit down to write. So if you can do those two things, you're going to have more of a possibility of having that creativity come when you need it to come. Okay, so I hope this helps. I hope it gives you something to think about. And if it does, please hit that like and the share button. And please return next Friday for my next writing tip. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you again next week.